Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for October 26, 2021. We have a scary show for you today. Well, if it was really a scary show, we'd probably talk about breaking Raspberry Pis or having them or possibly having them crash and lose data and things like that. But
Or other boards.
wow,
just do a whole show about other boards entirely. Like this. Here's the Odroid special.
Yes, that would be scary too. But I mean, if we're talking about,
I'm thinking blenders and Raspberry Pis.
Yes,
Ooh.
I mean, scary would be something really, something of actually bad happening. But I will open the floor to those thoughts. First of all, of course, I'm Abram Pelch, editor-in-chief of Tom's Hardware, and we're joined as always by Raspberry Pi expert Ash Hill, our associate editor Les Pounder, and our frequent guest contributor Ryder Damen. Ryder, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I love your artwork.
Thank you. It's the hotel's artwork, but I like it.
It's the hotel. So, Ryder, what is the scariest thing that has ever happened to you when doing a Raspberry Pi project?
Ooh, when doing a Raspberry Pi project.
Or doing any of your projects, I guess.
I did have something, maybe not so much scary, but frustrating happen to me the other day. I was working on a series of Pi projects, and I prototyped my Pi upstairs, and I was bringing it downstairs to install it. And when I plugged it back in, it wouldn't work. So I tried different power supplies, and it just wasn't connecting to the network. So eventually I plugged it into a monitor, and it just wasn't connecting to the network, and I couldn't figure it out. But it turns out that I had privated my SSID, and I had never set the correct settings in WPA supplicant to actually enable the Pi to connect to that IP. So I spent maybe about 6 hours trying to debug why none of my Raspberry Pis would connect to my network before I realized I had privated it like 2 weeks prior and hadn't shut any of the Pis off since then.
That is a little scary. Ash, how about you? What is the scariest thing that has happened to you doing a project?
Not only do I have a good story, I have the guts right here. So I used to have LEDs behind me, and they would change color, and it was all cool and fun. And I controlled it with this Raspberry Pi Pico. And you can see all the little hookups here. I even have a button that I was using to cycle through different effects. And it was really complicated to get set up to fade between just specific colors. Like maybe it would have, one of them was like an ice effect. It was like dark blue and light blue, and it would flicker. Like I had maybe 10 different settings, and it took forever to set up. And I plug in my Pico, and I wiped it without thinking. No backups. And I have not restarted and made that LED strip project again because it's just so frustrating to think about how quick it was gone. That's my Pi horror story. You're muted, Abram.
Sorry, that is truly frightening. I just didn't want the audience to hear my screams. Les, how about you?
Back in the early days of being a freelancer, writing Raspberry Pi articles and doing electronics for companies, I built a Zoltan from Big, a movie, for a company. It was all the software to make it speak and do that sort of thing. And it was when Raspberry Pis were like still brand new, and you couldn't really get them. You have to wait weeks to get one unit. And I went to this client's office, and we started doing the electronics for it. And I cooked the Pi. Seriously, put it on the bench power supply, dialed up the voltage too far, and the sock just went, poof, let out some magic smoke, and I owed him 40 quid.
Well,
that was painful.
Yeah, the project got finished in the end, but that moment you were just like head in hands going, what have I done?
Yeah.
Abram, you've got a story too, right?
Yeah, I mean, my Raspberry Pi stories isn't as bad as non-Raspberry Pi ones. I mean, I did fry a Raspberry Pi at one point. I'm not really sure. Raspberry Pi 4. I'm not really sure uh, what I did to cause it, but it has never booted again. It's sort of the red light lights up and nothing else. But considering, as we've discussed in the show, I've got a lot of Raspberry Pis, although never enough. Uh, Never enough, apparently, because I can never find just an extra one lying around. I should be more like Ryder, who I think you just take your Raspberry Pi to one project and you put it into another.
I saved the SD cards, but yes.
Yeah. So I had an incident a couple of years ago where my son and I had built an Arduino robot car, and it caught fire in the middle of our living room. That was a little messed up. We bought I was letting him do all kinds of stuff with it, and then I was sitting on the couch and I was into my own thing. He's like, Dad, why is there steam coming up from this? No, it's not steam. He had done something, I think, to overload like one of the voltage regulators or something, and it smoked, but it wasn't like that bad. Now, the worst things that I've done in my computer life is having like erased someone's hard drive, which they had not backed up, and because I was helping them do an upgrade while wearing socks on a carpet. So what did we learn? Back up your data. Don't wear socks on a carpet while you're working with electronics. Well, at least I haven't since then. Now all the floors in my house are hardwood floors, so I don't have that problem. I don't know if that really solves the problem or not, but it's amazing to me how many times with Raspberry Pi or whatever, people, including me, just have like the boards lying around and whatever. And generally speaking, even though they're not, particularly protected, nothing bad happens to them. They're really durable, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Unless you put too much voltage through them, they're pretty good.
And then if they're not really durable, as long as the data is stored somewhere, I mean, you're only risking $35, $45, $55. I mean, not that that's not money, but it could be a lot worse. I feel bad for the folks who have fried a PC when they're putting in like a $500 CPU or $800 graphics card.
I have fried a CPU.
You fried a CPU?
A single long hair, worked its way into my computer case, got wrapped up in the fan, overheated, just destroyed the CPUs. I was sad.
On the other hand, it could be a signal of a time for an upgrade, right?
And that's what happened.
That could mean that it's time for an upgrade. But besides scary things that have actually happened to you in terms of your electronics doing scary things, or another scary thing that I will say has happened to me a lot, but I'm sure it happens to anybody who has voice assistants in the house, is when they just like you didn't call them and they just start doing something.
That's creepy.
Right? Like one time a few months ago, no one was talking about anything related. No one called the Google Assistant, and Google Assistants tried to give us information about seances. I was like, what? That's weird.
Extra spooky.
Yes, that is kind of spooky. So
you can ask the Google Assistant. I learned this a couple years ago. You say the wake word, and then you say, "Let's get spooky," and it will play some weird music and turn off and on all the lights and appliances in your house. It's pretty fun.
That's cute.
See, I like Ryder's idea for a Google Assistant the best, which was just to take an old phone, because then the phone's not listening to you. The phone is not listening to you when you want to use it, when you don't want to use it. So
And if people are over, they don't know what it is because you don't have to say the voice command. You're just like telling this unknown person somewhere out there, turn on my lights, and then the lights come on. It's like, well, who do you have listening on standby, ready to hit the button?
Yeah.
It's very satisfying. Something about it.
I'll let, then we can get into the actual good projects. But what I heard came out this week, which almost sounds like something Ryder would do as a project. It sounds like they stole this idea from you. Fisher Price has come out with a chatter phone. The chatter phone is the phone that lots of little kids, including my 2-year-old daughter, have, which has like little eyes on it, and it rolls around, and it has like a dial. It's like an old-fashioned toy phone. And they've come out with a Bluetooth version of it that actually works to make calls. And it even says something like, when you finish dialing, it says like, I'm proud of you or something, which the traditional one doesn't talk or anything. So I could totally see you turning that into a smart chatter, a Raspberry Pi powered chatter phone or something.
No, that's not off the mark, actually. Right now I'm converting an Etch-a-Sketch into a digital Etch-a-Sketch.
Oh, wow. That's great, because my son and I, it's funny you should mention it. My son and I had been talking about that, like, I don't know, 6 months ago or something. Like, hey, I wonder if there's a way that we could make a digital Etch-a-Sketch. And I was looking, because, with dials, and probably you could do it with a Pico, but I wasn't sure. Are you going to actually do it with an e-ink display, or?
Yeah, I ordered a 7.5-inch e-ink display, which are not cheap. And I'm taking the Etch-a-Sketch apart and only keeping the frame. And then I'm going to put the display in with like a Pi Zero and a battery pack. And then I think I'm going to let the internet draw in it for me instead of me.
Wow.
I like
well,
Nice.
That is amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So, what are some of the Halloween projects that you've been working on? I know you've done quite a few.
Yeah. So I meant to have my a couple of videos to show you, but I forgot my external hard drive at home. I do have some photos that I can show. The
Great.
first is the one that I let me share. Sorry, I can only do one thing at a time. Share screen works best with 2 monitors. Great. So the first is, and we'll just open this up. I just posted this one, a fog machine. So this isn't actually the first fog machine that I've made into a smart fog machine, but this is the latest. So I picked this one up at Walmart, and what I really liked about this one is it has an IR receiver in it. And my original goal was to use an IR receiver for the Pi and an IR LED, and I was going to clone the signal. But I kept trying and failing. And Halloween's coming up, and I don't have a lot of time at home. So I ended up just hacking the remote to actually send the IR signal to turn the fog machine on or off. So I figured out if I shorted these 2 pins, it would send the IR blast from the LED. So I soldered a little bit of some jumper cables on there, and I am using just a relay to close the circuit connected to the Pi. And that way the button still works and everything still works. It's a bit of a hacky job, not the most elegant solution, but the way that I have it connected is to this external camera. And that way when a person comes into frame, it fills the area with fog and doesn't have to waste too much fog juice. I also did this one a while back. It's a mannequin head that follows you as you walk around. So if I move over here, the head will turn very abruptly to wherever you are. And that uses, once again, person detection, and it just grabs the like XY coordinates of the person in frame and moves the head accordingly. It was really fun. There's a servo. Just a simple servo motor that's here that I hot glued into the base of this wood, and that's controlled directly by the Pi. So it was a really, really easy thing to build. And someone else has built a pumpkin that turns based on it. I think we had an article about that, and I thought that was really cool as well. And then finally, this, which I am getting ready to show to trick-or-treaters. It's a zombie arm that extends out as you walk by. So I just picked this up from the dollar store, and we have a pneumatic cylinder right here and a bit of a controller. So the way that this works is we have a power supply, which is connected to this pneumatic controller. We have an air inlet that's here and 2 outlets for the piston. The relay controls whether or not the arm should be extended or retracted, and that's all controlled by the Pi, and once again triggered if there is a person nearby. So let me see if I can. This is what it looks like. I kind of just duct taped it to my porch for now, but what I'd really love to do is bury this in my yard so it's like a hand reaching out of the grave. Something like that. I haven't figured out a way that I can do it that won't ruin the cylinder because they're quite expensive. But that's mainly the things that I've been doing for Halloween.
So why do you need the for those who don't quite get the setup? Why do you need the relay?
For which project?
Well, actually, I mean, you have it on a couple of projects, but why do you need it on the fog machine?
Just to close the circuit. Like I could use a MOSFET. I have a relay available, so I'm just closing. I think it's like a 3-volt circuit, and it was just the easiest thing for me to do.
Got it. Now, you said there's a way that if you had more time, you could not use the remote control that came with the fog machine and create your own IR. How would you do that?
Yeah, so I originally started playing around with, I think it's like LIRC. It's a Linux IR apt-get. You can install it. It's a nice package. It wasn't really working for me, and I think it's more designed to clone television remotes and accept commands from television remotes. So the fog one, it wasn't really working. And then I tried to do it directly with just listening and grabbing the pulses directly with like a Python script, but I just couldn't figure it out in time.
That's really cool. I mean, I suppose another way is if you knew what circuits to trip inside the fog machine, you could hack the fog machine itself.
Well, I've done that before with older fog machines that don't have IR. It's just for those, often the connected remote to the fog machine is in fact high voltage. And I never want to encourage anyone to play around with that if you don't know what you're doing.
Right. Totally understand. But that is really, really neat. And all these projects are covered on tomshardware.com, I should note. So if anyone wants to try to implement these in time for Halloween, all the instructions are there, and they can do it. One thing I noticed that you use a lot in your projects is this thing, you use the V2. This is the V3, the Wise camera. And why is it that you use the Wise cam so much?
I like the fact that it is kind of a self-contained device. So first of all, they support RTSP. So if you flash a custom firmware, you can grab the frames off the camera. But a lot of the projects that I do, I like to keep my Pi inside and protected from the elements, but still have something outside trigger it. And it's great with the camera because I can leave the camera outside and the only communication between the camera and the Pi is over Wi-Fi. So I can have the detection in one place and the action in another, versus a Pi camera where I would need like a really long ribbon cable, I guess.
Right. I mean, these are also, they're just kind of made for it, right? I mean, you can use them outside. They come with lots of good mounting stuff like screw holes or whatever. Granted, I think most of them you would need to find your own power source, right? I mean, they go over USB, but what do you usually use, a battery, or you just put it somewhere where there's an outlet?
I have like a couple 50-foot micro USB cables, and that tends to work for me. But I think a battery would work too.
Yeah. So yes, it used to be the case that you can only do it with the V2, but recently with the V3, which I have here, there's also instructions on how you can replace the regular firmware with alternate firmware that gives you an RTSP feed. I did some research on this, and I haven't found a lot of other cameras that do that will allow you to do an RTSP feed which means that, anywhere on your network, you can just tune in to this IP address on your PC using VLC or on, or using your Pi and incorporating it into a script that reads the image. And the image quality of these is really good, and they're cheap. This was on Amazon was $35. I believe on their site you can get it for $30 if you pay for shipping. So it's good deal. These wise cameras.
Oh yeah, for me the best benefit is being able to grab the frames with something like OpenCV and Python, because from there I can do anything with it.
Yeah, and you have, if you see some of the projects Ryder has done, like his package project, which is amazing. All of that is getting the input from a wise camera. So speaking of things that are somewhat wise, Ash, you have a connected witch's hat.
Yeah, I'm a tinker witch. No, that's silly. I made a hat, and it's a witch hat because it's Halloween, and I've got some vials in it here. Oh, it's hard to point. There we go. And you can see some wires sticking out of it here because, of course, you have to put a Raspberry Pi in your hat when it's Halloween. So I've got a Raspberry Pi Pico, and it's connected to an LED inside one of these vials because I ran out of LEDs. Ideally, you want to have 3. And it's also got an accelerometer module, and I'm going to connect this battery here that has a JST. I think you call that stimma as well. Anyway, I'm going to plug this in here, and what it's going to do is make my little vial light up, and whenever it tilts, it changes it to green. There we go.
Oh, that's really cool. So
Nice.
What type of battery are you using with that?
That's a good question. I have it wrapped up in tape, and I can't give you a specific answer on that, but it's the same one that I used in the beret.
Is it a lipo? Is it a lipo battery, or is it a?
I think so.
Yeah,
I'd have to double check.
So, I mean, I personally am not opposed to that. I know some folks get worried about putting lipo stuff maybe too close to their head, and I know some other kits you use like battery packs with double or triple A's, but either way, it's like however you power it. That's pretty awesome. My assignment for the weekend is to get my Adafruit goggles hot glued together so I can wear them to a Halloween party, because I have the NeoPixel rings that are powered to go inside. I'm just kind of nervous about like messing them up, so I haven't opened my hot glue yet. But I have a Halloween party that I'm going to on Saturday, so I have to have it ready for then. I'm supposed to be going as the Mad Hatter, so I'm going to put this on the hat somewhere and do that. Our friends at Adafruit also have, although it seems to be out of stock, but if someone can get it for themselves, it would be a great last minute Halloween project. They now have LED glasses that are way level above these goggles, that instead of being goggles like this, they're sort of like sunglasses. And instead of having like rings you put inside, they actually have the LEDs going across, so they can have writing that kind of goes across and says something.
It's like a matrix.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Like a matrix. So I checked yesterday; they're out of stock. But if I can get one of those kits in time for Halloween, I will be putting it together. That one they recommend like a 3 battery a battery pack with like 3 AAAs, I think. But it's always cool to be able to put to light up your costume. So Les, what Halloween scariness do you have?
Well, hopefully it's not scary. Hopefully, anyway. Just like Ryder, I go to dollar stores. We call them pound stores in the UK. And I picked up these. Unfortunately, they weren't a pound. It's 6 ghosts in hats. And they light up. Now, pretty boring. They just light up with a little switch box. That's okay. That's for decoration. But I wanted to do something fun with them. So I connected them to the internet. So if you were to send a tweet now to hashtag the PieCast, it would actually light up those ghosts behind me. Let's get the fingers right. There we go. And I'm going to show you how I made it. So first of all, here's the circuit. It's a Raspberry Pi Zero inside the official case up there. It's got a battery pack to power everything. And it's got a special little chip on the center, an NPN transistor, a 2N2222, which is really just a switch. Right now it's holding open a ground connection. And then when the center pin is turned on, so a signal sent from the Pi, it connects the two pins, the left and right pins together to close ground and turn the lights on to the ghosts. And you see the lights come on 10 seconds behind me. I thought, internet connected, great, we'll do that. Then I thought, hang on, what happens if the internet has a few issues or it doesn't work at last minute? Well, I thought, I know, let's build a ghost detector. So that weird green chip at the top right of the screen is an RCWL-0516, which is a really catchy name. It's actually a microwave Doppler sensor, and it's fantastic. It's just like a PIR sensor that we get in lots of Raspberry Pi and Arduino kits. It looks for movement using Doppler radar effects, and it's really sensitive in that it will pick up people in the next room. So it's really good as a trigger for when people are going to walk into a room to have something turn on and scare them. And also these chips, these Doppler sensors, they're only about $2 to $3 from AliExpress, which is really cheap.
Mm.
So I'm going to show you how I built it. It's all in Node-RED. So Node-RED is an event-driven programming language which uses nodes, these little boxes that are connected via wires to form a flow from left to right, so to speak. So I'm going to go into the code itself, and you should be able to see what I'm doing. So right now, the PieCast is highlighted, and someone sent a tweet with hashtag the PieCast. It goes to the rate limiter. It says limited 1 message per 10 seconds. That's so it doesn't get overrun. It then goes to a trigger for 10 seconds. That trigger will turn on the GPIO pin for 10 seconds. Then it turns it off, 0. And it sends all that to a trigger pin, which is my GPIO pin, which is number GPIO 17, to turn on, which turns on that pin in the 2N2222 transistor to make the lights turn on. So that's the internet part of it. It's really simple. And you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, just above my head, all the people doing the PieCast tweets, and I can see who's doing it. I can see their names. I can see Ange has done it twice, just to make sure. Gregory Fenton, I've been talking to him on Twitter while the show has been on. I can see him there. But I'm going to show you the sensor as well, the ghost sensor. So I'm going to connect that up now. So literally Node-RED, I just connect those two wires together. I click on deploy, and it is going to turn the ghosts on straight away. So you can see behind me they're on. And if I just wait for about 10 seconds after they finish the light sequence, and no one sends a message. Okay, looks good. If I start waving my hands around now, it won't work because it's going to fail because it's a live demo. That, and you've got some great B-roll footage of me waving. There you go, it's working now. That Doppler sensor's picked up my movement, even though it's behind 2 plastic cases on top of the stack of plastic cases behind me. And Node-RED has made all this possible because it's just so simple to build a flow, a natural project. I just went in and set up my Twitter credentials, got an API key and that sort of thing, connected it all up, and then told it to look for my Twitter ID, all the public tweets which have the PieCast in it, and then just react. When a tweet happens, it goes and it sets off that chain of events to make the lights turn on. As easy as that. So Node-RED, you haven't tried it before, give it a go. It's really good fun. And back to the scary bit now.
That is great. So there's just so much you can do. There's so much fun, scary stuff you can do with Raspberry Pi in honor of Halloween. And I just want to let folks know we have Ryder's tutorials on our site, so you can go and create a scary zombie arm, a scary fog machine, a scary head. That was the scariest one for me. Or you can go and look at his article on how to scare people who try to take your packages, and that would be pretty scary as it is. Although you might not want to blow powder at your friends and neighbors if they're not stealing anything. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Ryder for joining us and everyone for tuning in. As always, you can catch us anytime on YouTube or Facebook, and live on Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. UK time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern. We will see everybody next week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.